Okay. It's already on, or? Hello.
Okay, I'm gonna go live right now. I'll let you know when it. Okay, we're live.
We're going to call to order the February 11th, 2026 Dauphin County Gaming Advisory Board meeting into effect or in session. First of all, roll call of officers or members. Ellen Brown?
Present.
Tim Chateau?
Present.
Mike Iberson?
Present.
Smitty Brown?
Present.
And Pat Leonard is present. Item number 3 is report on executive session held board before meetings. We held an executive session before going live this afternoon to discuss just the way we're going to with some legal matters. Item number 4, public participation. There is nobody present, so we'll go to item number 5, approval of the meeting minutes, January 29th, 2026.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the meeting today is to review and discuss the 2025-26 local share submitted applications for recommendations list to the county commissioners. And before we open up to the board, there's 5 members of the board that were asked by various people within the county and the state to sit on this board. And it's been quite an interesting couple months for all of us, I think. We have had the opportunity to hear and speak to so many people that do so many good things for the county. And we have a challenge ahead of us to try to figure out where that money's going to go. There's so many good operations and so many good organizations, but there is only so much money to give out. So we're going to open up for discussion amongst the board members about the process that we're going to follow, and hopefully be able to come up with a real good recommendation list. So I'll open up the meeting for anybody who wants to have a few words.
Good evening, everybody. I thank you for all serving on the committee with me. Again, I echo the sentiments of our chairman. It's been an interesting process. And when we were asked to serve on the committee, the board, Gaming Advisory Board, we were charged with the responsibility of representing as many of our Dauphin County residents and constituents and visitors and folks that come into Dauphin County without consideration for personal bias or preference or with any emotional attachment to any of the projects. I think we've done that. We've evaluated all of these applications through the time these folks spent with us. We asked very specific, relevant questions, and it will be a very arduous process for us to go through each one, but I think we have a good groundwork for how we want to approach it. The way I plan to approach my evaluation process is to take a look at municipal infrastructure projects as they benefit all residents, all citizens of Dauphin County and all who pass through, be it on our roadways, our public transportation, the use of receipt of emergency services and municipal services. I also plan to take a look at the projects submitted for public safety to make sure that they comply with the 2011 study done regarding the fire service needs for Dauphin County to use as a guide to eliminate redundancy in services, redundancy in apparatus, and to eliminate any unnecessary funding of projects which should not be funded by the board. And I also plan to look at the public sector nonprofit agencies that provide continuing services to the Dauphin County residents and all of our folks that come here throughout the county. I hope that all of our decisions can be based upon some basic guiding principles that the funds that we recommend to the commissioners for support and disbursement to the agencies will provide the maximum level of benefit to as many people in Dauphin County. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to echo a lot of Member Chateau's comments. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to all the great things that are going on throughout our county. There's a lot of good organizations, but I have the same opinion. I'll be evaluating, municipalities, infrastructure, public safety as a top priority through this process. I believe that that's what the grants were intended for originally, and evaluating each organization based off of the impact that they have on residents and the number of people that they have an impact on. That's really all I have for now. I look forward to working with the board and figuring all of this out. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I first would like to thank the commissioners for providing me with the opportunity to serve in this capacity. It's a daunting challenge, and having 5 brand-new people on this commission makes it all the more interesting and challenging, but it's been a pleasure getting to know my fellow board members, and I look forward to working together to come up with a plan that will have the greatest impact as this money is leveraged for the greatest good.
Yeah, I just want to echo what's already been said by the other members. This has been quite a process, and I think it's been one of the best processes I've been through in my 30 years of working with human service agencies. There's a lot for the public to digest when you talk about infrastructure programs, human service programs. There's a lot. There's a lot of things that make this county and other counties work and run that most day-to-day people don't see. And I think part of our responsibility is to bring some of that to light through the grant process. We get an understanding the infrastructure needs. We get a great understanding of what some of the nonprofit and for-profit needs are as it relates to the people here in Dauphin County.
Our legal counsel has worked diligently and long hours on providing us with some very important information, really bringing everything to from 8 to 10 to 12-page applications to easy read, easy to look at format for us to make some initial feelings. But we have to dig. Now that that's been done, we need to dig a little deeper to make sure that each of us want to go through and prioritize and get it back into into me for try to come up with the recommendations for the commissioners. And the information that was given today, and I should say that along with that information, our secretary, Mr. Iverson, has also, during the whole process, put together his easy to read information. And now that I have both of them in front of me, I must say they pretty much mirror each other. And it brings it a little easier for us to do. But we still have a daunting task to go through each of these and give our opinions. I just want to make sure that if we want to go through any of these documentation to ask any questions. I know some of the stuff in red were changes. Am I correct in saying that, LaToya?
Yes. The applicants identified, how much they were requesting from the local share grant program through the process of them attending hearings or the meeting for those that didn't have a hearing. Some of those numbers have changed. So if that did happen, we tried to identify that for you by putting that in red to see that their request amount may have changed.
So,
That could be for a variety of reasons.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So if you want to take a look at they have it broken down into the different municipal or nonprofit categories. And I didn't know if there was anybody on the board that, as you look at these today, are there any question as to why the changes? Was it more of a lower change, asking for more money, et cetera? So I'll open up, I'll give you a couple minutes to look at that and ask any questions that you might have. And I know the two that off the top of my head that I asked were about the SISM team at the Dauphin County Prison. You advise that that's a lower number because it's in red for us.
No, it's a higher, it's up
Oh,
by
I'm sorry.
$100.
Okay, I'm sorry, higher, and then the DCIU is actually lower.
Correct.
If I'm correct in saying that.
Yep.
The other one that's in red that I was, nope, it's not under municipal, so I will wait for the next category. Anybody have any questions on the municipal side of the requests? Mike, Smitty, any questions? The next category was the fire departments within the county and their requests. And I did not see any changes on those. I didn't know if anybody had any specific questions as to additional information we might, LaToya might be able to provide to us right off here today, or we can go back into their applications at a later time and read their applications. Ellen? Tim? Michael? Smitty?
No.
Nonprofit is I'm sorry. Yes, nonprofit is the next category, and I did see Boys and Girls Club of Harrisburg changed to 64,000. Was that a higher or lower, LaToya?
That's a lower number. I believe the change was because they secured a grant from the Community Aid Foundation.
Okay.
They provided that information as part of the review process.
And can you tell me what it was originally, please? I'm sorry?
73.
Thank you.
The full amount they were originally requesting.
Thank you.
Breaking the chain. There's question marks after the committed or before committed funds. But it doesn't say who it's from or.
Yeah, it looks like we didn't have the amounts from those other funding sources. Would you like for someone to follow up with them?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. If, I mean, they say something was committed, but we don't know how much or from whom.
According to her answers, her committed is from the PA Commission on Crime and Delinquency. It does not say the amount. Her pending is the Boyd Foundation.
Well, I know for a fact that the Boyd Foundation has made their awards, so they either got it or they didn't.
Yeah, this is on her answers as of January 26th.
They made their awards at the end of December.
We noted that, to follow up with them.
Thank you.
So I guess I'd ask the same question under Capital Region Literacy Council. The question marks after the red are the ones that they did not get or they're waiting to hear? Is that what the double question marks would be? Or the single question marks?
Yeah, whether or not those are the correct amounts.
LaToya, can you tell me what the difference is between pending and anticipated?
So we would characterize pending as they're waiting to hear back from the organization of whether or not they received an award. Anticipated may be that, some applicants say that, well, we've been promised, it's not official yet, sort of thing. We think we're going to get this, or, but if they have an award letter or they already have the funds, we say that's committed.
Mr. Chairman, a question I guess I have to follow up on that. Do we have like a deadline? What is the date that the applicants need to confirm that they've received the funding in order for us to make a decision on the financial viability of the project? Is there a certain date that certainly before we make a decision on the grants, but in the past, has there been a date that they will receive that final word, or they're required to show proof of receiving the leverage funding?
Can I answer that? No, there is no date. Arguably, if the applicant received questions from the board and they were told to respond by a certain date, that's when the information should have been submitted. If the board wants to give them more time or follow up or, go with the information that you have, the opportunity has been there to, submit additional information or responses. Certainly, if you, want a communication of, this information was requested or it's unclear, give it to us by X date, that can be done.
Brooke, has any dates been issued to the applicants of when they had to have that submitted?
So if the applicant had a public hearing, they had specific dates, obviously, before their public hearing. The non-hearing applicants that could have attended the 29th meeting had a deadline of that Monday, I believe. They were supposed to have the answer. If you go into the public hearing schedule and in the column for if they sent in their questions, if it's in yellow, that means, and it's not yes, doesn't have a yes in there, that means we don't have their questions for their answers. So obviously they missed the deadline. If they send it to me today, I'm adding it to their file and then I'll update the list. But yeah, they all had a deadline to meet the meeting that they were attending.
So at this point, is this a timely report? The information on here, is this accurate as of today?
That's our understanding. That's the information that was submitted from the applicants. The information that was submitted from the no hearing applicants from January 29th has been updated in this chart.
I think in order to properly deliberate or evaluate the merit for the applicants, we should consider today as the deadline when the information needed to be received, because otherwise, how will we know how to, measure the viability of the project, whether or not they're going to get the funding, and if the leverage funding is part of that? I think we would probably need some guidance on that.
I agree with you. I would assume we can make that a motion.
I think it's up to the board in terms of whether you want requests to go out for additional information or an opportunity to respond or proceed with what you have.
I personally believe we should proceed with what we have, unless there's any other, we can open up for discussion.
I think that if a nonprofit between now and the time we meet again in 2 weeks, or any organization rather, not a nonprofit, has received monies that can be considered leveraged funds by the next meeting, and they want to bring it to our attention, it's something we should take into consideration before we make a final determination. But otherwise, we only have to go on the information we have. So I don't know that I would recommend a motion that there's a line. I wouldn't draw a line in the sand today.
Okay.
But it's up to the individual organizations to let this group know if they have received additional money that would make a significant impact on our decision. And clearly, after 2 weeks from today, that line does need to get drawn in the sand.
That 2 weeks, does that log jam anybody in terms of the work that's also being done? To wait 2 more weeks to get additional information from this side of the process?
It's up to the board if you feel that information is important enough to, give additional time or, wait 2 weeks or not.
What is the date of our next meeting?
February 25th.
I make a motion that on February 25th, at the time that we convene our meeting, that all additional supporting documentation have been received by DCED staff, and that will be our final deadline.
I'll second that.
There's been a motion on the floor in a second, and I think it's fair enough for discussion purposes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. So does that mean, on your end, Brooke, does that mean you have to send out an email to all these people telling them that it has to be in, or do we just, obviously, if anybody's listening in, they're going to understand it, but how much do we have to, just to make sure everybody has the same information, how much do we have to advertise that? Is any idea on that, LaToya or Brooke?
To advertise what?
That they haven't, that's a drop down, or that's a drop dead date?
You wouldn't need to advertise that. This is a public meeting. Anyone could have attended, and they also could be listening in because it's being streamed.
Thank you.
So then I also don't need to send an email out to all the applicants saying,
No.
because they already had deadlines.
They've been advised that if anything changes significantly, they're to let you know it.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. I just wanted to make sure we cover all our bases.
If there's specific information you're looking for from an applicant and you want Brooke or us to follow up, let us know.
As you go through the document, is there any other questions on the nonprofit that we would have for Brooke or LaToya? And I really appreciate you've made this very easy to follow, and I appreciate it very much. I think I only asked it yesterday or Monday, and you came through, so I appreciate your work on that. Any other questions on the nonprofit?
Was there specific information the board wants with regard to reviewing the nonprofit requests? Any way that we can assist in that?
No other questions, or you still taking a couple minutes?
I think we just answered a lot of our questions by setting a motion.
Yes.
No, just
I'd like our legal counsel to look at the nonprofits and give us a list of the nonprofits that have contracts with Dauphin County Services.
With the Dauphin County Human Services?
Yes.
Okay, we can do that, or we're happy to do that, we will do that. But since you brought that up, and just in sort of response to some of the statements that have been made, there was a time when the fire study was more fresh, that the board at the time would ask for a list of the fire requests and how they, corresponded or followed that fire study. What the fire study said about what they were requesting, whether, the facility was in good condition or poor condition, or the apparatus being requested was redundant or past its life expectancy, that sort of thing. Is there anything that we can do to assist the board with reviewing the fire request, or you think you're set in that regard?
Personally, I think I'm pretty set on that, unless any of the board members need that assistance.
I think all we can do is base it upon the 2011 study, although it is dated now, it's 15 years old. But if a facility or apparatus was deemed to be in need of immediate replacement 15 years ago, it would still be in that same condition or worse if it hasn't been. But for our other two members, Alan and Smitty, if they need that or would like it, maybe it'd be good for them to have access to that report so they could use that as a guide. And it's on the county website. On the gaming page, if you want to see that comprehensive study from 2011.
And the last category was for-profit. Are there any questions for, I see the at-home personal care, that has a different number, 75,000? I'm assuming that went up?
It was 38.
Brooke, do we know why it went from 38,000 to 75,000? And if you did already submit that, we can go through our email correspondence from you. That's a pretty significant increase. I saw on the other page, I think there was a question mark about estimates or support. Is there any supporting documentation with that as to how they arrived at the 75,000 or the 69,000?
So, a couple things on this applicant. The application, when it was submitted, the cover page said they were requesting 38,000, but elsewhere in the application, it's dated 75. So that was a clarification that was requested, and their response was it was actually 75. So that was the change in the request amount. In terms of the, whether or not there were estimates, I believe this applicant attended the no hearing meeting and was asked for the estimates in person. So I'm looking for those.
This was the one that said she polled vendors, but was unable to provide past invoices or anything like that.
So as of now, they've been unable to provide the invoices and the supporting financial documentation?
I don't believe we've received anything since the new hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was they were here and they were specifically asked, and their response was they polled vendors for estimates. They didn't have past invoices because this is the first time with the project. No estimates available. So they were asked in writing and in person.
I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions on any of the categories? LaToya, do you have any direction to give us, any recommendations from moving forward before the next meeting? You've been through this process, or Brooke, you've all been through this process many, many times, and I think as we said from the very beginning, we just want to be very, very open and transparent with our decisions, and we want to make good decisions. And both of you have made it pretty easy for us to have this at our fingertips. And I just want to know if you have any recommendations or direction that you can give us, hints or.
I would just, keep in mind that there are program guidelines that, were approved and applicants applied based on that being, the guidelines for this application cycle. And so the eligible uses of the funds are identified in there, those categories that the Gaming Act has identified. Also, in terms of being eligible to receive a grant, we're already past that part of the process. The applicants would have gone through that sponsorship process, and eligibility was determined. If they weren't ineligible, then the application was rejected. So I don't think you need to focus on that at this point. Once you get past the point of, whether or not this is an eligible use of the funds or meets one of those categories identified in the Gaming Act, then there's the, application itself and whether it addresses the information that is necessary to be able to determine what the project is, what they're proposing to do, what sort of problem it's solving or need that it's going to meet, whether or not, there's a budget that's comprehensive enough to understand what the costs are, what those costs are associated with, how did they come up with those costs, and then, what's the time frame for completing the project? Is it, viable or, actually capable of being carried out? Sometimes you may see, in an application that, it's such a new organization or a new idea that it hasn't even been tried yet to, even, figure out, can it take place or can it happen? And then also there's, information related to, how it may further the goals stated in the guidelines and whether that's transportation infrastructure, human service, those sorts of things. And then with the different types of projects that are before you, whether it's a municipal service or fire and emergency services, what are the needs that they identified and how they may be either collaborating with or, assisting other municipal areas within the county with those services. Or if it's a nonprofit, are they providing a service that a municipality or, county needs, maybe contracting for or requesting those services that are necessary to, run the local government. And so I would just keep, those things in mind. But I do think that they're identified in the program guidelines. And then you also have information related to, whether they've applied before, received a grant before for this project or a different project and what that history looks like.
Thank you. I'll open it up for any other discussion amongst the committee. Well, seeing none, I think we know our direction and what I guess I should say our homework is, as far as each of us taking a look at the information and coming up with our individual recommendations and coming back and trying to come back with a really good recommendation list for the county commissioners, and we'll do that over the course of the next 2 weeks before we meet. Am I correct in saying that, LaToya?
If the board thinks that it will be in a position in 2 weeks to make, public recommendations, or, still working through some of the information, I mean, that's the course of the board. There's no deadline that I'm aware of in terms of, recommendations having to be made by February 25th.
Do we want to lengthen that time then?
I think we get it on the agenda, and we can always table it, correct? If something happens where we're not ready,
That is correct.
that's what I would do.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part, Mike.
I would say we put it on the agenda to make recommendations at the next meeting, and if we're not ready, we can table it.
Okay, okay.
So that gives us the option.
Yes, okay. All right.
Guess we can discuss in the next meeting, just so we have a plan.
At the next meeting, how would people feel about doing like a partial list? Or you want to just wait, do it all?
I think my concern with that would be stirring confusion or concern in the community. I think it's better to wait. We issue all of our recommendations at the same time, because if we do some of them next month in the next meeting, then some of the agencies might be, well, what's next? Do I reach out to somebody? Who do I talk to? I believe some of these applicants might be more inclined to try to reach out to people to talk about their project. So I think it would create less confusion or concern if we just waited. We could discuss them at the next meeting, like if we have questions or concerns about some of the projects. If we're ready to make our recommendations, that's wonderful, but I would not want to just release a partial list. I think I'd rather wait and do the whole list. That's just my opinion.
I agree.
I agree.
With nothing else to discuss, I guess I can call for adjournment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So ordered.
I have one, but yours is much better in order. Mine's off the schedule, so.
Are we offline?
Be offline. Actually, how some former boards would share them by date.
Yeah, I'd rather.
This, I love the one.
Yeah, do you just want me to read? Well, no, I have a total, like a total. But I can email you this spreadsheet.
I just wanted to make sure we were consistent, because I have for municipal and emergency services, I've got.
That's probably pretty close, because I have like nonprofits mixed in, and I'm at 10.5.
I just wanted to clarify a point that was raised earlier, when we were talking about right to know. When a public agency engages contractors, consultants, boards, under the right to know law, if a third party has the agency's documents, records, whatever the case may be, work for that public agency, if they are records of the agency,
I have to give them up.
you have to, well, I'm not gonna say you have to give them up, but the agency that receives a right to know request is responsible for getting those records from third parties.
Right.
So an agency can't just say, oh, that contractor we hired we don't have them, they're not in our possession, control. That is not what the law has said about public records that are in the possession of a third party. They're working for you, they're contracted by you, doing a service or something for you. They're the agency workers.
So it's 2 weeks, or should we have an executive session again before the next meeting?
I mean, we'll have to see, so, typically when the recommendations are made or there's a list, there are lists. So, that does take time to, compile. There would be a list of the recommended awards, but also those who are not being recommended as not being recommended. That information has to be categorized and characterized in that list.
See, that was one of my concerns. Just do all what you just said. Can you get all that done in 2 weeks?
Because when the recommendation is made to the commissioners, it's important for them to know, well, these people also made a request. This is the project. This is the amount they requested, and they're not being recommended. That's presented to them in public. Because they don't have the application, everybody knows.
Yes.
But you also may want to have, for your own information, on your list of recommendations, this is how much they requested, this is how much we're recommending. This is a condition that's being placed, but here's why. You may or may not, that may not be necessary information that you want to provide to the public. So you may have you may have a public version, you may have a confidential version.
You're able to help me with all this.
Oh,
right?
yeah, we would assist you with all of that. I'm just mentioning that if
I'm
that's.
sorry, I'm just new at
No, I'm
this,
just mentioning that for an understanding that, it takes time to put all that together. That's all.
So I
mean, what are we doing?
Just so I understand, I think it was discussed that each board member is going to send you their recommendations, and then get it to Pepper, myself, or whoever to.
Or you can direct them to send it to Brooke if that's,
Yeah,
or you
whoever,
want to
but-
see it first and,
So each board member is gonna have a list of recommendations, and then they're going to be compiled for an average, correct, before the 25th meeting, or like what?
I don't think it'll be done by then. So that means we're not gonna be making decisions next month. I mean, maybe. I'm gonna start working every night. I'm gonna take an hour or
yeah, I
two.
think you'll be in a position to make recommendation, your recommendation list early March, possibly. But in 2 weeks, with everyone getting their information, Pat and then to us, it sounds very ambitious. But if that's how you all want to do it, that's how you want to do it.
Well, if we don't get there, we just table it.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we were doing this was so that we could assist.
Try to get
Brooke
back
and
on
company
track.
So that they can strike this off their list and get onto their other grants.
Well, let's endeavor to get it done.
We're gonna be starting pre-apps probably May, June. And also tourism is due April 1st. We got another grant.
I'll have you my list by Friday.
I'll do mine next week.
All the stress is gonna be on Brooke. Gotta worry about tourism, apps coming in. Start the new cycle for gaming. You guys are gonna start out.
Yeah, we need to meet to discuss the changes that you want to make for next year.
So we can make recommendations to the application process?
Yeah.
Yes.
In the past, that meeting has been around May.
We can make recommendations on changing the application process.
People who got rejected.
We can take
In the
input from
past.
Brooke and
You guys
from
been
you
doing
guys
this
to
for a
how to
while.
make that better. Did you ever get that software program you
Do
needed?
they try to state their case or?
To manage
is
your
it-
grants, they never bought you
They
that.
didn't make it, so
They
it was done?
typically start calling.
They have
They start
$10.8 million of discretionary funds. They can buy you your
then-
software.
Yeah.
I'll be
No,
very
Maybe
vocal about it.
commissioners then will ask us.
I'm gonna be vocal about it.
No,
No, you can do it.
So they just ignore you?
So we're going to actually.
And you've asked for it. You have the money?
Oh, yeah.
What's the holdup? You have the money.
So then, are we presenting then possibly, or talking about all 5 recommendations and then going to narrow it down to one next meeting? Is that the hope or the plan? So
It's aggressive, but it would be nice. It'd be nice for you, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
So for instance, Brooke, I think here's how this is gonna shake out. I think there's gonna be a set of grants that we're all gonna kind of agree with.
would it be helpful if, like, on the list that Latoya provided, if we, I know in the past when we provide lists that go in front of the guys, the commissioners, we have a column for Commissioner 1, Commissioner 2, Commissioner 3. And would it be easy for one compiled list to have Mike's recommendations so we can see when we're talking about the borough of Gratz, what everybody recommends, and then at the next meeting, come to Jesus agreement that we're gonna meet at this number? Or do you just want a straight average of all 5 of your numbers?
Well, there is benefit and risk with that. The benefit is it gives us a starting point to engage in discussion.
Why is
I say,
Ellen's?
why is Ellen at $1 and I'm at
Yeah,
$100,000?
so,
But the risk I have is if that list gets out ahead of time throughout somewhere, and then people start questioning the
it
different.
only gets out if somebody puts it out.
Okay.
In the past, that's why we collected after the meeting, we collected it so it wouldn't get out.
So for instance, I see value in that because if there's a nonprofit and I think they should get 5,000, but they requested 40 and Ellen's like, no, they need 40, then she can say, hey, Tim, this is why I think that. And if there's a police department that, you know, I say they should get 100,000 and Ellen thinks they should get 5, then I could say, well, this is why. I think there is value in that.
So we want a list of,
So perhaps at the next meeting, the points that are being raised, that it's, you know, relation of everyone. Yes, no, yes, sort of thing, in efforts to get to your final list,
Starting point, right?
which could be in, you know,
I think to make it ease for,
That's me
make
too,
it
the ones
easy.
that I'm.
Like would it be possible to email the board?
yes, Mike
So-
asked me to do that.
Okay, so that we're all working and when we're discussing, we're all in the same
You said all of us.
order of applicants. So that your list doesn't start with the nonprofits and his starts with the fire and then we're trying to find it. It just goes in order. So if,
Yeah, they're gonna send that.
yeah, so work off of whatever they send.
I'm just gonna edit it and put an award sheet, a tab on it, so when they type something in, it's gonna be one list.
We will send it to Brooke.
We'll fund it all. All right.
So you're gonna send this to me on the next Excel spreadsheet.
When she sends it to me,
I'm gonna send it to everybody.
well, I'm gonna add that tab, unless you know how to do it. I have a tab, that whenever you type a number in here, that's what the tab, those are the words.
It keeps a running tally,
Running tally on the amount of money,
keeps a running tally.
so we know how we're doing with the budget.
That's
And
what he,
how much money do we
Well, I
have?
mean, that, you can, do you want it on a separate tab? You can tally
have the
on
numbers
the
yet?
same thing.
I'd say what?
What's available?
I thought it was 10,
10.8?
No,
Is that official? Is that like final?
that was presented at the last meeting, yes.
10.8.
Yes. Do you need a copy?
That's okay.
Okay. 0.8.
That's the most.
Yeah, I mean, I can send it to you and you can put it however you guys want to work.
Getting bigger and bigger because of online gaming. Yeah.
Selection is not.
and the commissioners have the same amount as us,
No,
as theirs 10.8?
It's on here as well.
I'm sorry.
They have 10.5 unrestricted, not intended for grants.
Not intended for
Well, not
grants.
in the Gaming Act, it's not specific to grants.
Okay. Do they have, and I don't watch the commissioners' meetings or anything, do they have that earmarked, that 10.5 million for going into the general fund? Is it going, is it walk around money or?
No idea.
That's their budget.
That's their budget?
We don't administer that.
Okay, I just didn't know if it goes into a general fund or a rainy day fund or,
Some of the funds are used for unrestricted gaming awards, and then it comes into our world.
so you don't know about it until it comes into your
Correct.
world? So Pat Leonard's plumbing, if I don't get it here, I can get it there, and you
You
don't
can
know
go ask
until,
them, yeah.
until you,
Yeah, some applicants did that last year. They were rejected by the Gaming Advisory Board, went to the commissioners, and it was approved as an unrestricted grant.
gotcha.
But we don't know it till it's,
Until it's in your
yeah.
lap.
And then whatever they do with their money, it's not us to know.
Okay.
We don't administer those funds.
I was hoping you were gonna tell me it goes into like a rainy day fund.
Yeah, that would be a question for Chris Davis, the county budget officer.
That would be nice. I don't think I know where it goes. That's the games we play.
The one year they funded the 911 center for like $3 million.
Yeah, it
It's all
goes to,
kind of stuff.
yeah, there's a lot of county stuff that
Last
it
year
goes
was
to.
9.7.
9.7, yeah.
I really appreciate all the work Latoya and your organization does. Brooke, I know I probably asked some really stupid questions, but I'm just not, in my mind, I have to open it up a little bit because I'm not politically.
You're doing a great job.
I'm not politically connected, don't want to be politically connected. I just want to do the right thing, and we're getting there. I want to lay my head down on the bed at night and say we did the right thing. And I'm sure I'll be getting some phone calls from certain people, and that's just the way it goes. And then when are they picking the next board for next year?
I mean,
There's not a 5-year limit
They
here.
don't need to do anything. They don't have terms.
you don't have
their
terms,
terms,
so.
Well, I was hoping there were.
Or anything.
It's either resign or you're still on it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're
unless
on
they
for
appoint
life
someone
now.
else.
You want that?
You're on for life.
I'll take that bet.
You're on till someone makes a call, like Mike said, tell you to resign or.
Yeah, shoots me because I didn't get their money. I wonder if that'd be work-related. No, it's not, because I volunteered.
Just think of all the knowledge you have in 10 years.
I'll tell you, it has been a good experience. As much, I say to my wife, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things for people. It's just, we all have our niche, you know?
this is your first
My
year.
passion's the fire service. Somebody else is feeding somebody. And it's really what makes the world go round.
Absolutely.
Forget all the laws and rules and regulations. It's this
I was down at the gym the other day.
It's of iron.
Huh?
Hey, here's Reese's peanut butter cups. Help yourself.
Yes, I was down at the Planet Fitness Center on 22. And EMS drove up. They go into like the men's locker room. All right. They go into the men's locker room. And they were in there for at least an hour. Okay. They bring the guy out. And the first thing that crossed my mind was,
No, it's not. Well, especially,
like, you know, because
Yeah, I know.
I don't think anything they do takes like 5 minutes.
Oh, no.
You know.
Person will get billed. That's right.
Brooke, I don't envy you at all. I can't see how you keep it all straight. And Latoya, they bring in all those binders. My God. That's enough to put me in love. I see the city finally came to grips, right? Weren't you you were representing somebody, I thought.
Our firm, yes.
Your firm was, yeah.
Representative Mayor, yeah.
And everybody's
Reached an agreement last
sit down and sing Kumbaya and all that stuff. I think I just saw it in the paper either yesterday or today. Ugh. Still Wanda.
get here for vacation. She goes right to the table. I'm gonna write something.
Really? Is this